Ganesh sir.
Sir.
Please sir.
Sir, voice చాలా స్లోగా ఉంది సార్. హలో.
Voice okay. Ganesh sir, okay. Hello. Hello sir, Ganesh sir. Hello.
Sir, నా వాయిస్ వినిపిస్తుందా సార్?
వినిపిస్తుంది. Your voice is clear sir.
Okay sir, I will start sir. Okay. Good afternoon, staff, faculty members. Today's resource person, Bharat Kumar sir. A warm welcome back to all for AICTE ISTE sponsored induction refresher program on business intelligence and big data analytics. It is my privilege to introduce today's resource person, Bharat Kumar sir. Bharat Kumar sir is an associate professor of the Department of Humanities and Social Science, Indian Institute of Technology, Tirupati. He works in the area of ethics, contemporary Indian thought, social and political philosophy. Sir, education qualification is a PhD, University of Hyderabad. Bharat Kumar sir work experience is assistant professor, IIT Indore from 12th August 2009 to 5th June 2016. Sir, associate professor, IIT Indore from 6th June 2016 to 13th August 2018. Associate professor, IIT Tirupati from 14th August 2018 to till date. Bharat Kumar sir is an
Ganesh, thank you.
Esteemed person who published many number of books, plenty of research papers, book reviews, contribution to syllabus covering department, and many number of paper presented things, and participating many number of workshops. And under him, there are two research scholars are available. That is Sri Lekha and Vivek Kumar Yadav, doing PhD under him. And the SARS awards and recognitions are Excellence in Teaching, IIT Indore 2015, awarded Indian Council of Philosophical Research, ICPR, the General Fellowship 2008 to 10, qualified UGC Junior Research Fellowship during PhD, gold medalist in MA. SAR's administrative experience is head School of Humanities and Social Sciences, IIT Indore, April 2013 to March 2016. Chairman, Library Committee, IIT Indore, September 2012 to September 2016. Chairman, Center for Continuing Education, IIT Tirupati, from June 2020 to till date. And once again, welcome back, sir. Bharat sir, thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon. Am I audible, sir? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Sir, audible, sir.
Yeah, so sorry. Thank you, Ganesh, for that very literal introduction. Actually, I did not, I mean, frankly, it was a little embarrassing. I mean, of course, I see a lot of, eminent colleagues, in this gathering, and of course, you are really discussing, business intelligence and big data analytics, and I'm asked to do something on stress management. And honestly, I myself, I'm not a professor. I mean, what is it? Sort of a scholar or any practitioner of stress management. But then I really, when I got the opportunity, I thought I would definitely talk to you and share some of my ideas, and also learn something from you. So, in this regard, of course, I request the participants to. I want the session to be participatory, because as you know very well, stress management, a topic like stress management, of course, there is some scholarly literature.
Sir,
there are some books.
I will share video, sir, 1 minute. If you are video, sir.
Yeah, I'll request you, sir. So, there are books available from various sources, e-books, and various techniques, tips, methods. How do we really address this entire discourse of stress and stress management? Having said that, it's also very, very commonsensical many of these things what really come across to us who are, the so-called intellectual class of the society. So in this regard, so my appeal would be to really make the session participatory so that we benefit more. And yeah, in this regard, before we really discuss and explore further, I request Dilip to play this small snippet, couple of snippets, but this one from one of our contemporary, scholars. Yeah, proceed, sir. Proceed.
The first time I came to United States, wherever I went, I heard this term, stress management. I could not understand. Because in my understanding, we manage things which are precious to us. Our families, our businesses, our money, our property, whatever is precious to us, we will manage that. Why would somebody want to manage stress? I couldn't get it for some time. Then I realized people have made a conclusion that stress is an extra limb that they have in their body. Stress is an appendage that they cannot get rid of. Stress is not a part of you. You get stressful because you do not know how to handle your mind. No attention has been paid as to how to handle this mind, how to handle this emotion, how to handle this body, how to handle these energies. Nothing has been done about it. You're managing such a sophisticated system accidentally. So you being stressful is a natural outcome of such unconscious living. There is no other way to be. Don't think your job is stressful. Now you're a student. Being a student is stressful. If you don't find employment when you come out of the college, that is stressful. If you get a job, even more stressful. If you don't get married, that is very stressful. If you get married, I don't want to say anything. You don't have children, that is stressful. If you have children, you pull your hair out with stress. So, it is not your job or your life situations which are stressful. Stress is happening to you because of your inability to manage your own system. Not knowing how to manage the system is stressfulness. If this happened the way you want it, you wouldn't be stressful. If you do simple inner engineering process, just 21 minutes a day. Today you take your pulse rate before and after food. Do it for 6 weeks, check your pulse rate and see, it will be considerably down. Which essentially shows with the same level of activity, this is a simple indicator. There are many other parameters that you could check. But this is an extremely simple indicator for which you don't have to go to any laboratory, you can check it yourself. The lowering of the pulse with the same level of activity indicates that your system is going at an easier pace. That means it's working much more efficiently. If you drive your car at 2000 RPM, the engine may last 100,000 kilometers or miles. If you drive the same engine at 5,000 RPM, it may last only 50,000 miles or less, simply because it's unnecessarily revved up. So if this can do everything that it has to do at an easy pace, that means it is happening efficiently. Any machine which has least amount of friction within itself happens efficiently, naturally produces more with least amount of stress. It is definitely time you do some inner engineering.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Before I request you to play a little later, not immediately, sir. Yeah, I want the participants to request to respond to this. So, what do we think of what has been said here in this clipping? What we saw. Um, is it okay if we really make it participatory? I mean, it depends. I mean, honestly, if you are busy, if you're really, I think I will go in a monologue fashion, or if we can make it more interactive, it would be nice, really. I mean to say, any thoughts, anything you would like to share about the clipping, what you heard, feel free to respond. And of course, this is you're all on the same level. I mean, it's not that I know more and I might have read some couple of books and all. That's a different story. But then, yeah, please try to opine on what you heard. What is stress? Is stress an important? I mean, why is that it has become such an important, theme to discuss in a program sponsored by ISTE?
Sir, if you don't have stress, no, then you can't do means you won't complete the work.
Okay.
Stress is good to some extent.
Okay, fair enough. Good enough. Good actually. Anybody else?
Because if no stress is there, then like
Yeah, so some stress is required.
Somebody must be there behind you so that you complete the work.
Yeah. Okay. So that you want to call it as stress, not motivation, drive.
No, it can be motivation. That sometimes it becomes also stress because we have to complete in time, on time.
Yeah. Anybody, please? No, why this wise person? I mean, one may disagree with him also. That's not an issue. Like I mean, in academics, of course, as we know, in knowledge, there is no final word. I mean, we don't. I mean, we may appreciate some point of view, adore something, but we don't. I mean, essentially, also we assume that it may not be the final truth. Somebody knows or something. But definitely, this wise man has something to say about stress management. Actually, he's asking us, is it an asset or something like to manage? I mean, why is, I mean, he was surprised to hear this discourse in the Western world. Is actually when he visited America, as he says, because I think there is a background why he's saying, so. In my understanding, Asian societies, including India, from long had a collective life, rather communitarian societies, as it is called in social sciences. We lived in groups, in families. I mean, joint family system is very, famed, unit of life, human life in India, in many parts of Asia. And stress, or professional stress, or personal stress, seems to be a modern thing, a modern coinage, something which is really talked of, I mean, last 20, 30 years or 50, 60 years more prominently. And this is something alien, something foreign to our culture, rather our way of life. In a sense, we had family support, social support, I mean, enough human relationships, friendships, to sort of ward off all those, any anxieties we face, in our everyday life. And then it was never a mammoth, problem to be really, to really think about it, and wonder, and, to ponder about this, reflect on this, in fact. Whereas looks like in Western societies, though I know I am oversimplifying, but it is just to make the point. I mean, I don't want to stereotype, simply stereotype that Western societies are individualistic, are radically individualistic, and Eastern societies are collectivist, if not communitarian. There is an element of truth to that, but then, I mean, in this case, he says that he thought, this, word was used as if it is a problem worldwide. It is assumed to have universal, relevance, this the coinage of this word and the problem itself. So coming from a background like India, so this is seems to be a sort of a surprise for somebody like him. I mean, that's what I understood. Secondly, of course, having said that, we have to deal with this concept called stress. As our Jayprakash is pointing out, some element of it seems to be good, seems to be making us productive, making probably yielding positive results, enhancing our, what in a sense contributing to our own empowerment or enhancement of ourselves. But then, when it becomes too much, it seems to be a problem. That's the whole point. How much of stress is good and how much of stress is harmful? How do we define how much is good and who defines it, and who defines it for whom? Can it be the same across all the people, across genders, across different social identities, or it depends on each person? In this case, each person is on his own or her own. Can some people take more stress, and some people really get fizzled out for small, amount of pressure or stress or anxiety, and they become aloof, they become depressed, and they engage in self-defeating thoughts. So, I mean, this seems to be the terrain. I mean, how do we really take care of ourselves? How do we take care of our performance, both as a person and as a professional? How do we behave given a particular situation? What are the biological and psychological or physiological indicators, which tell us that somebody is in stress, or telling us that we are in stress, for that matter? I mean, how do we really take care of it? How do we survive some catastrophe? Whether we engage in some social bonding, or we really, what are the ways out of this entire thing? So, and both in the short term and the long term. So basically, what are the physical, emotional, psychological, behavioral symptoms of this issue called stress, and why do we get into this? And how do we really handle this? How do we manage this? That seems to be the problem we have. So in this regard, I request the organizers to play a small clipping which sent. Is it possible, sir?
Yes, sir, it is possible, sir. 1 minute.
Yeah, please, go ahead. Yeah, you may play, sir, whenever you are. Otherwise, yeah. So we are trying to understand. Yeah, yes, sir, no problem. I'm just doing it. So, we have to understand what is stress and what are the types of stresses, and how to define it, or how to.
Accumulated stress can result in false FFF response activations. When trying to measure our stress, and we need our body's stress hormone cortisol, is usually seen as something we need to avoid. This is not true. We need stress, and we need our body's stress hormone cortisol to rise and fall throughout the day. Stress helps us wake up in the morning, helps us focus, learn, and remember new things. It's when people experience too much stress and start having difficulties coping that stress becomes a problem. High levels of stress can disrupt the natural changes in the body's stress response system and start to affect our physical and mental health. Over time, accumulated stress can result in false FFF response activations. When trying to measure our stress tolerance, the bucket analogy can be helpful. Our stress tolerance, or the size of our bucket, is a product of our genes, personality, and life experiences, and its size varies from person to person. The water in this analogy is the combination of all the stress in your life. We use the coping strategies we have available to keep our bucket from overflowing. They are like taps that allow water to drain from the bucket. Stress can include training, work, school, relationships, finances, moving, changing jobs, or the loss of a loved one. Both positive and negative experiences will affect the water level. A big bucket can hold more water or stress before it overflows. With a smaller bucket, less water is required for the water or stress level to become critical. While you can't change the size of your bucket, you can make life adjustments to reduce water coming in. You can also learn new coping strategies and stress management techniques to allow water to drain out. Mind tools, exercise, quality sleep, relaxation, and sharing your feelings with friends are some examples of effective water taps. Staying up late, sleeping in, drugs, inactivity, procrastination, suppressing or ignoring problems are examples of unhelpful coping strategies or false taps. They might give temporary relief, but actually result in water flowing back into your bucket. This video was created by Brave, Building Healthy
Yeah,
Minds.
thanks. Thank you so much. Thank you for that. Yeah. So now, may I request you, some of you to, okay. I mean,
Ayaka's shoulders are
I think-
family's
I
duty
think-
to cherish.
we may leave that, yeah. So we may understand stress as something, a physical or chemical or emotional factor that causes bodily or mental unrest, something which really tilts that equilibrium, which actually seems to be causing some uneasiness, more acutely it may cause some kind of a trauma, some more stress, more anxieties. If you're really experiencing it intensely, even it can cause diseases. People talk of ulcers, peptic ulcers. Extreme stress can cause even ulcers. There are some physical manifestations of this sort of a issue. So in that sense, physical and chemical factors can induce trauma or infections, or lowering your immunity, or even cause some illness to the body. Emotional level, of course, it disrupts our cognition, and it creates imbalance in our in our behavior. So in a sense, we may not able to cope up with problems once we are stressed. So these are some manifestations of we may feel tired, we may feel anxious, or we may feel there may be lack of motivation when we are stressed, and at emotional level, even cognitively, we may not be able to when we do more mistakes, errors, or even involved in some accidents. So on the whole, in our behavior, it will be a sort of considered as a poor behavior, and it might even lead to deterioration of the relationships with colleagues, with family, etc., etc. Because we are indecisive, we become irritable. We may have some other patterns. We may involve in other patterns of trying to escape by we may indulge in some some habits which are not seen as so healthy for you and your brothers. So these are some indices which actually can be seen when a person is stressed. So in this regard, I want you to kindly spell out what are your stresses, and do you experience stress? What causes? All of us experience stress. Definitely I experience, and I'm sure many of us are. Can we spend a little time on that? In a way, this is basically opening up, trying to share, trying to know, trying to learn, trying to believe that it's a very common thing. It's not a disease. It's not a problem. It seems to be. It's not a crisis. Definitely, it is a problem, but then it is absolutely within our range to we can overcome this. So any inputs, please. What are the triggers which cause stress in you, and how do you handle? How you have been handling as of now? Anybody? No one?
Sir, hello.
Yeah.
Sir, handling new subject causes stress, sir.
handling, dealing new subject.
Okay. What
But
else? Who is okay, sir? Who is talking, sir? I was.
Sir,
Sri,
not
Sri,
liking
Okay, yeah, please,
the
please,
work
proceed,
you
sir.
want to do.
Please, yes, sir.
Not liking the work you are
Yeah.
going to do it.
Yeah. Something which we don't like, but we have to do for many reasons. Maybe it's for professional reasons or for some social reasons. We have to do that, though our heart is not in that. Yeah. Anyone else? I mean, how do you experience it, sir? What are the symptoms you experience when you feel stress? Any memory? Can you recollect? Do you feel breathlessness or nausea or some muscle ache or a headache or I mean weight loss, weight gain, or any fainting, tiredness, tightness in chest? I mean different, and I'm talking about physical symptoms. I mean anything from your memory. If don't, no problem. I mean we are not trying to list out. I'm just trying to familiarize with you sometimes certain how our own body reacts to some of these situations. Definitely, in my case, my shoulders become stiff. Yeah. Anybody? Shivnathan has some.
sir, we get some irritation, sir. Irritation.
Okay.
Not feeling good. Not feeling good, sir.
You feel irritated. You may feel angry. You may, when you have mood swings, you may be more. I mean, you may
Yes.
experience a sense of anxiety. You may worry more. I mean, you probably know you don't have such enthusiasm to do that. It may lead to increase in self-confidence or self-esteem. Or I'm just elaborating, sir. I'm just giving you the list. Whatever generally people report, and it is there in the standard literature. Yeah. And one or two we may experience. It's not that all we experience at the same time. Yeah. Any others, please? You feel tensed. You feel sometimes guilty, or sometimes feelings of shame come to us. We become more cynical. We feel we are not in control of things. We feel helpless. Actually, concentration can take a hit. Yeah. Any others? How are you dealing with this as of today? Okay, and you feel irritated, or when you feel you dealing, of course, we are all teachers, and we are all researchers, and we actually share the same world. I mean, there is a pressure to publish, there is a pressure to excel in research, there is a pressure to do a fantastic job as a teacher, and also service administration in the organizations where we work. I mean, we are supposed to excel in that, all that. I mean, whatever. I mean, and of course, at a personal level, families, the roles you play, and probably more demand. It's more demanding for women probably when women work. At least a country like us, both domestic front and professional front both have to be catered to. I mean, it's more than probably male. I mean, generally speaking. I mean, it's not me saying something. It is found in many studies. A lot of literature says this. Stress is not experienced equally by genders. I mean to say women experience more stress than men, because if particularly when given the professional demands and also the domestic load. Yeah. How are you dealing with this? Anybody, any ways out? Of course, we come to it a little later. Also, what are the possible ways? I mean, no, basically, easy. I mean, how do we behave when we're stressed? There is seems to be some kind of a drop in our performance. I mean, some people really lose appetite. Some people overeat. We manage our time bad, in a very poor manner actually. So we don't relax. We are too busy with our stress to relax. Too busy to relax, as it is called. A lot of stuttering happens. We can't. There is some kind of a outburst or overreaction for smaller things, and we may become more mistake prone or accident prone. I mean, no one. I mean, I can't cope with this. There's a loss of judgment, or why is everyone getting at me? Or I mean, you may get even self-defeating thoughts. I mean, I'm a failure. I mean, I'm unable to cope up with this, I mean, world is not understanding me, and etc., etc., etc. So, So basically, many of us or all of us go through this at some point or other, of course, in different proportions. I mean, as you tell, whether it's irritability feeling or sadness, we feel tense and upright, or loss of concentration. I mean, and as I enumerated, even the physical symptoms, whether your stomach may be churned up, you have tense muscles, you feel hot, you feel weak in your legs, and you crave for sugar, you have pains, you feel more tired, and you have a tight chest, and your heart will be pounding, you sweat more. So these are, I mean, this is very common, observational, observations, which in people whom we consider as somebody who is actually in stress. So anything more you want to add here? No, my point here is, I mean, when I mean, I heard of a psychologist telling a society like India, with such beautiful social, support system, probably I was doing reasonably well. But I mean, in his own way, he was sharing this anecdote. Once this television entered houses, it started creating a disturbance and a sense, because people don't talk to each other, don't share, and we depend on gadgets, or I mean, like we now do on our mobiles and etc. Again, the various gadgets. So that, according to him, that was one of the entry points or the shift, in terms of social life or cultural life, how these problems started showing up. Similarly, of course, now you multiply that with all the apps and messengers and gadgets available, and we sometimes we seem to be really not spending enough time in finding true human connections, but probably attached to our own. I mean, these gadgets or something of that sort. So there seems to be a loss of relationship. So whether this is also a very profound reason for us to experience this, because we are bottling it up, we don't release it, all these things are getting piled up. So that is a thought, you can think about it. So yeah, as I mean, I would like to really so this is so I mean, as I was I hope you are able to see this. So I mean, of course, it's defined as something, how do we respond mentally, physically, emotionally to real threats and perceived threats. By the way, traditionally, scholarship says that people used to talk about, I mean, many times you visit a counselor or a therapist, or in professional setting, or somebody to really you go through some kind of a catharsis. I mean, you release all the what you experience as feelings, and whenever you under stress. So eventually the field understood probably we are only talking about behavior. This behavioral therapy or addressing the problem at symptomatic level is not the issue. We need to go really deep. We need to really go to the core. That means we need to understand how we are thinking, about stress, how we are thinking about life, how we are thinking about world. So I mean, cognitive behavior therapy, I mean, this approach, that means we need to really change our thinking, how we really address, so this the stress. I mean, this cognitive behavioral approach is the thing, from some time now, which actually says that that you can control your response. You may not control the events or the situations or the circumstances of your life, but you can control your mind, your emotions, your actions. It's as simple as that. It looks very simple but very profound, and it's not that these management gurus or these personality development coaches or these new science and art of stress management theories have to tell us. I mean, it is there in our culture, it is there in our civilization. I mean, particularly in Asia. When I say Asia, it includes China, it includes Confucius thinking, it includes Taoism, it includes Zen Buddhism, it includes Buddhism, it includes Hinduism, it includes Islam, African cultures, Arabian cultures. It is very much available. in all the cultured civilizations. But we, in ancient Greece, for that matter, Stoics, famous thinkers called Stoics, they did spell out ways which we can how we should conduct our life, come whatever may, come whatever may. Simple thing. They say that what you can control and what you cannot control. You don't worry about things what you can't control. In whatever situation you are, whether you are running a country or you are running a business or you are just a professional. In a sense, we seem to be sometimes taking over responsibility about things which we can't even control. So in this sense, they had their own tips to cope up with stress even then. But of course, we need to remind ourselves about how do we really, conduct ourselves in this day and time. Basically what they have been saying is concentrate on what is in your control. You have power over your mind, not on outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. It's as simple as that. It's very, it looks very commonsensical today, but then it is also important when you are really in a problem. So, one of the Stoics, says that, people are not disturbed by things, but by the way they think about them, but by the views they take of these things. You please understand. Am I making sense? Is it making sense? Is it, or is it absolutely going on that? See, I'm trying to bring to your notice, as engineers, as researchers, as professionals, or as individuals, we have enough resources within our cultures, civilizations, in our history, in our philosophies, in our literatures, to rely on. Gandhi, when he was at the peak of national movement, with all that stress, we have to use that word now in this session, when he really finds himself helpless, he used to rely on Bhagavad Gita. Reading of Gita used to give him strength. That's what he says. It gives him that sort of an anchor. How do we really, ensure that you don't drop your, there is no drop in your performance because of some externalities, because of some external events. So this is the idea. So my effort, in a very humble way, is to bring to your notice there are multiple approaches, multiple ways of handling stress. People have elaborated. Some people say there are some 400 odd ways of treating stress. And many of us may be doing it already, sometimes consciously, sometimes not so consciously, and different geographies have their own ways of dealing with this problem. From time immemorial. So there is no one method. You need to discover your own way of dealing with this problem. I'm calling it as a problem. How and why it becomes a problem, we have to see that. Yeah. So as we proceed, is it okay? Am I making sense, please? Anybody? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
See.
Okay, sir.
Don't be polite and be. Let us have this conversation. That's how we should learn from each other. Yeah. So basically, why is that? People. A lot of literature says that it is not that it is very much biological. It is ingrained. It is ingrained in us, in our bodies, in our genes. It's just a reflex. When a primitive person was facing, when I was doing this activity of hunting, when faced with the lion, it generates that fight or flight response. You might be experiencing it. Some of you. Do you experience this fight or flight response, sir, madam? Whenever have you experienced this in your life situations? Anytime? Do you understand what I mean to say? Whether you stand there to resist and fight, or you just run away because the situation is overwhelming. The demands are too many than the available resources, at least for you at that moment. Have you faced this? Have you experienced this sense anytime? Fight or flight? Anybody? Sometimes I feel, you really you start identifying many excuses. If I am finding some, I mean, somebody was talking about new course or a new situation, or you are talking to some public gathering or something which is very overwhelming for you, and you feel I should run away from this situation, or you are talking to some international audience on a stage, and suddenly when you or rather even if you're prepared, that sometimes you are well remember, you become little what is it called, I mean, you fear, you stress yourself about that. So I mean, I'm talking about this response, which seems to be really wired in us. It's a, I mean, a lot of people say it's just a physiological response. It's a bodily response. It is there in you, and it was useful for us as human race. For as a human race, we survived, or we managed to, prolong our existence because we had this sort of a reflex in us, that is fight or flight. Given an awkward situation, stress is not bad, or rather it alerts you, it makes you more aware of the situation. It asks you to respond in a very lively fashion, to a situation. So you raise your game or you run away. Only two ways of handling this. Okay, that's what, of course, one of our colleagues was telling, there are two types of stress. I mean, he was talking actually about some stress is good. Literature says, technically the word it may be that eustress, that means good stress, positive stress, which actually empowers you, enables you to perform better, which enables you to leave your complacency behind, which enables you to really throw off your laziness, which makes you to compete with others, which makes you to hurry you, or whatever, make you participate, being there in the present and putting your efforts. So that eustress is something which we should cherish and probably cultivate it, nurture it, so because it helps us positively to respond and raise the game and to enhance our performances. The problem comes when it becomes a distress. That means when we talk of stress management, essentially we seem to be talking of distress management. That stress which will incapacitate you, which will suck off your energy, which makes you feel helpless, when you feel worthless, you feel overwhelmed by the occasion situations. So for some, it depends, from small occasions to larger life events. So that sort of a distress, how do we really handle that? So that seems to be the issue actually. Yeah, I mean, distress, of course, is understood as something which is really, which overburdens you, which actually challenges you, throws you out of the gear. Whether it could be anything from financial issues to relationship issues, or a lot of work, and not having your own time, or probably something very chronic in terms of work or any health issues, which really can be very, very. I mean, many things we may face, or we may hear of somebody having these conditions, and a sort of a trauma actually. So in a sense, distress is the thing which we are talking about. I mean, how do we manage this when we are confronted with such sort of a situation? Is it okay? Any questions? Of course, eustress, it is good in a way. It asks us to up our game, and then it motivates us, it energizes us, it regenerates us. I mean, it could be it is positive. It is it makes us do things and of course it is in a sense helpful overall in the overall sense. See, positive psychology, or people talk of positivism a lot in the discourse of stress management. What they mean is, I mean, how do we really nurture positivity, positive thoughts, even if you are in a negative situation? I mean, the so-called negative situation. I mean, come whatever may, whatever is the problem, whatever catastrophe you are having, I mean, like we have this sort of a pandemic around. I mean, I'm sure many of you know that in this pandemic, a lot of people suffered because of the fear of disease, not just because of the disease. I'm sure you agree with me. I mean, that stress, that over imagining a problem than required, imagining it like a mountain in your mind when there is a small mole objectively outside you. Are you with me? Are you with me, sir? Am I making sense? I mean to say, how do we really react to an event or a situation is within our powers. Even if it is a life-threatening situation, you can handle it in a calmer, quieter, mindful way. That's what we are talking about. The discourse of stress management is all about understanding your stress level, understanding the role of your unique personality, whether it is making you lose that self-esteem, I mean self-confidence, or you are losing control of yourself, whether you are controlling life or the locus of control, as it is called, is internal to you. That means you are in charge of your own emotions, your own thoughts, your own actions, or you have outsourced your control to external sources. And what is the role of thoughts, beliefs, and of course emotions as we handle stress? How do we manage time? How assertive one needs to be in our life, or for that matter, in de-stressing ourselves? How do we really develop coping skills? How do we cope up with stress situations? What are the relaxation techniques one can understand, one can pursue? So basically, this is the thing. As we proceed, what are the sources of stress, and of course, what is stress? What are the sources of stress? What are the types of stress? What personality types experience stress more than others? And whether it affects our health or immune system or other psychological issues, it generates. And then how do we handle it? And as I was telling, how do we relax? How do we strategically manage our stress? In this regard, you get a lot of material, a lot of texts. A lot of even video lectures or videos available in big world. So I also just sent a link to you. Of course, of course, I'm talking from IIT point of view. NPTEL courses are the thing IITs are done. So I may advertise for one of those. Somebody has done from IIT Kharagpur a course on stress management. So I've sent a link, and this is just one course. It's not that they're freely available for your consumption. Any point of time, if you're interested, you can read, go through it, or listen to it. Or it's available in multiple languages, including Telugu. I don't know how many of you are Telugu speaking or more comfortable in Telugu compared to say other medium of communication. So it's not just one. There are multiple sources. One can really take benefit of, and somewhere here, many of us have to become our own stress coaches. Of course, if the situation is acute stress, as they talk about, which we are going to discuss really here, or rather, chronic. So chronic. And we need really some help. Maybe some help is required when it becomes a chronic problem. But otherwise, acute also. When it is related to some event, some specific episodes, probably it is within our purview. We may handle it ourselves. So what is acute stress? In distress, suppose we try to understand distress as two types. How do we really understand this acute stress? Basically, we have to do a lot, in terms of job, or we have to meet deadlines, teaching new courses, we have to meet publishing deadlines, or, or sometimes overexert yourself through many things, whether it's physical activities or, So this may last for a shorter period of time. It is acute, intense, but then maybe it lasts shorter period of time. I mean, even at a physical level, see what they're talking about, whether, having some headache to body ache to discomfort in some part of the body or soreness somewhere. So all these can be categorized as acute, but then this is short-lived. But chronic stress, whether it is your financial, factors which bog you down, which really make you sort of chronically stressed, or a long-term disease, or a failed relationship, or something which is something repeatedly happening to you, or a long-term failure. All these can be understood as categorized. This sort of a stress can be categorized into chronic stress. So of course in my understanding, most of the acute stress can be handled by you, even chronic stress. But then, of course, if it's something beyond us, we need to find support systems and ways to address the problem. That, of course, we'll see what are the ways suggested, and what are things we might be doing as well. I mean, how do we really relax, whether it's relaxing your body or quietening your mind, or how do we cultivate this mindfulness, and I mean, how do we reduce this stress? How do we become organized in terms of reducing stress? I mean, all these things are, a lot of people say SEE, that means sleep, eat, exercise. Simple, eat, sleep, exercise, as simple as that. But then looks like when we are stressed, without our knowledge, without us being conscious, we may not be eating well, we may not be sleeping well, and we may not be even, of course, involving in some form of physical exercise or activity, which will release some good hormones. Actually, see, we are also talking about hormones here, bodily hormones, whether it is adrenaline or dopamine, when you really involve in this exercise and all, the release of these chemicals, which can really uplift your mood, or cortisol, which is stressor. That hormone seems to be deadly hormone in terms of creating stress or continuing stress. So how do we really involve in this sort of relaxation techniques, or finding more calming down or something like that? And also at our thinking level also, what sort of values, goals, or attitudes we should have. I mean, how do we think? Do you really are you over blaming yourself? Are you personalizing any event to yourself? Are you an emotional person? Are you magnifying something which should not be? Are you thinking too much, or taking over responsibility, or I mean, a lot of errors in thinking, because our own faulty thinking actually results in our, in creating more stress for us. So that, doing that at that level also we should be, and also the values and attitudes and goals. How do we really cultivate sense of gratitude? How do we first of all recognize what are our values, and then how do we cultivate optimism? As a value, as an attitude in life. How do you laugh? How do you laugh at yourself or laugh about others? Or how do we show compassion, be kind to things? So in that sense, overcoming our own emotions, worrying less, I mean, trying to reduce reduce stress, or being looking to de-stress, whether it is at work or at life, may make us more resilient to these things which really these some of these things, and we should probably adopt some habits, and probably imitate, even for that matter, some people who effectively handle stress. We need to inculcate some habits, how do and all those things should become so natural. Having a support system, how have a sense of humor, how do you organize yourself in terms of time, even getting sleep, eating right, exercise often, and things like that. So and also basically identifying what are the stresses in your life. So this is basically a sense of self-knowledge. I mean, okay, self-awareness. If not self-knowledge, how do you recognize that you are in a problem? and how do you tell others that you are in a problem? How do you seek help when you are in a problem? And how do you get out of this? So this seems to be the case. So we were talking about stressors. I mean, stressors are basically some what is it called? Stimulus actually, which triggers some heightened alertness. The more it persists, then it can lead to a problem. This thing. So we did cover this. So I just want to show this graph. You see this. This is important actually. One of our colleagues was telling how much of stress is useful and how much of stress is harmful. That was a point in the beginning of our session. See now here. If stress is to be understood in terms of performance, if it is at an optimum level, your performance seems to really peak. High stress, then it seems to lead to anxiety and unhappiness. Low stress, again, I mean complacency, boredom, lack of motivation or lack of activity, or I mean some even you can say even taking things easy. So this is the point. How much of stress we need to welcome, how we need to cultivate, and how much of it is to be warded out. I mean, it is to be handled, managed. So this is the any questions as of now, please? Any questions? Any criticism? Any observations? See, as I told, many of these things are commonsensical for this crowd. Any observations? Any comments? Any response?
Nothing, sir. Nothing, sir.
So, I mean, why do we stress out, and what are the warnings? We have discussed a bit, and this is the graph. I would say it's very, very important, which actually, where our performance and our optimum stress and optimum performance coincide, they converge. So this is crucial. So we need to really look at that. But then, if you overstress, there are some disadvantages as well. It's harmful. It can increase your heart rate, as we have been talking, and it can stress you, and it can result in bad decisions, and many other ramifications. So how do we really reduce stress? How do we really tone it down? How do we find support systems? I'm going to go little quickly because I want, if possible, some discussion. So so these are some suggestions. I mean, how do we really? Everything is in mind, as they say, in our mindset. How do we really handle things with the right mindset? That's the way we have to see that. How do we bringing in positivity and finding the right mindset and living healthy in the face of stress? How do we gain control over our own stress? That happens only if you face stress and accept it, not by denying it. I mean, you need to really embrace it. I mean, some people say, love your stress. Embrace, it's your friend. A lot of people are saying, don't think it is an enemy or a foreign element to you. You need to respond to it by embracing it. That means it's so natural for us, but then you nurture it up to an extent it enhances your performance. So you need to find that right mindset and right mental balance to really handle stress. I mean, what is that they're saying? Become stress-free through your thinking, by controlling your thinking, and through controlling your emotions, and of course your actions. Of course your diet or your exercise or your different ways. I mean, as you know very well, in our own culture and tradition, there are multiple ways to calm your mind. Can anybody point at any examples or any practices, please? What is that in Indian context? What is famously suggested by many thinkers to control stress? Any examples? How many of you do yoga? How many of you do meditations? How many of you believe in this concept of nishkama karma? That is a selfless attitude, in a way that you can have control only on your work, not on its outcome. That's what this was famously told by Lord Krishna to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita. And this is what even Stoics are talking about. You have control only on your work, not on its outcome. Then why are you stressed about it? This seems to be a very good tactic. Whether you believe in the principles or not, if you want to have a stress-free life, you need to be tactical as well. That's what our own tradition is telling. And it is the same thing told, in many traditions, including, ancient Greece. I mean, that's what I was trying to say. I mean, you need to secure yourself. Act as if you are not stressed. Practice self-denial. Meditate, premeditate. So this is what even Gita is saying. I'm sure you might have heard of this, this episode of Nishkam Karma, no, where you focus on your actions and don't worry about the results. That's okay, and because you are not in control of them. So there's one famous episode which we can take inspiration about, and of course, lot of I mean, if you want to talk about Gita again, it is told a person is happy only if he can control his anger and desires in his present life. I mean, that sort of a thing. And um, uh, you know,
Bharat sir. Hello, Bharat sir. Voice clear గా లేదు sir. Hello. ఇక్కడ పెట్టేసి
Yeah, am I audible now? Sir, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm told there was some issue. How long I have been talking to myself? I don't know that. So my yeah, these are different tips and techniques to sort of lower stress. So of course, be realistic, identify limitations. All of us are limited, finite human beings. So plan accordingly and be honest with yourself, be realistic. Otherwise, we may add tasks and we may really, we may have to rush against time and against the resources we have. So of course, I mean, have a easy life. I mean, I mean, laugh at, have the ability to laugh at yourself and at others, of course. And others means at good situations. I mean, not laughing at others and looking down on them, not in that way. Have a funny side so that it'll make you light. It will make you light. You know, somebody told that you should live your life in a light way. I mean, be further light. Have that sense of lightness, easiness. You know, don't think that you are carrying the, I mean, a lot of weight on your shoulders are being overburdened by life situations. Feel light so that your body also will react accordingly. See, basically, what we are saying here is that there is a problem outside. Assuming there is a problem outside, how your mind can react to that. That is in our control. We can change our thinking, or we can mold ourselves to react in a particular way to that problem. So as we know, body can influence mind, our mind also can influence body. If we change our thinking, body also will follow. The same stressful situation will look more easy to handle. It's in your mind as well, the way we react, with the way we think, the way we absorb things. So that's the whole point. Whatever is outside you, independent of that, how do you think? Even assuming there is a grave problem outside, you can change your thinking in your reaction, in your response. That's the whole point. Yeah. So I mean, relaxation exercises. I know. I mean, these are different ways. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to sound juvenile because we know all these. We have been doing it, or we may do it more. I mean, there are multiple ways. In fact, there are apps actually also which may be helpful. To suggest that how do we really take care of some of these emotions, or controlling our behavior, things like that. So reframe a problem when it comes. Ventilate. Have positive thinking. Have some scope. Ventilate. I mean, in a sense, when a problem is there, then you share with others. Whether you put it on paper or you note it down, because it might give you some relief. Or you talk to somebody. I mean, that's what therapists commonly do. What the famous phrase in every session is that I listen to you without judgment. That means they just, people know that they are looking for a listener, somebody who can understand them. It's not that they're looking for really solutions, but there's somebody to really empathize with them. So have that sense of support system for yourself. I mean, if you can't handle yourself, and of course get organized, and it is doing. I mean, believe in sense of equality and basic rights, and be assertive. Sometimes being many times we take a lot of things because we are not assertive enough. That assertion is also a very good idea to protect your own space. I mean, come down, divert, think logical, and all those things. So basically, this is the point. These are some of the things which I wanted to share. Yeah, any questions, any criticism, and things like that. Of course, I can go on. I mean, I have some, but basically, there are. How do you control your emotions? How do you control your thinking? I mean, some people have suggested a model called SPACE model, SPACE, and some people have suggested A to E model. I mean, how do you really challenge your own thoughts? How do we really deal with the negative type of thinking? How do you avoid these negative thoughts, and how develop some healthy thinking in terms of how do you control thoughts? In terms of emotions, how do you deal with sense of guilt, with sense of shame and humiliation, and dealing with worry? This is the basic thing. And how to get moving. So this is also part of the game. And of course, how do you deal with others' emotions? And in terms of actions, how do you become assertive? How should be behaving? How do you solve problems? How do you cope to reduce coping to rising to situations to cope to reduce stress? So your problem management skills, your assertive skills, your how do you deal with the criticism? All these things are part of our action. So, and of course our diet and exercise. So this is what the domain says. This is what the terrain is, regarding stress management. So I want you to tell how do you deal as of today, and what are the ways you may share your experiences, please. Next some 5 minutes or so we can spend on that. Yeah. The whole point is all of us have some values. We need to really look at our values. See, for example, of course, it is catching up in our society also very much, definitely. It is told in Western societies, success is more valued than persons. That means people value you for your net worth, not much about the worthiness of you as a human being. So if you are successful in your career, in your profession, whatever you're in terms of wealth generation, whatever it is, so that success seems to be the measure of human life. Whereas in our own context, probably it is not just success, a satisfaction, not just material wealth, material gathering of things, but then something more, non-material, some satisfaction, belongingness to a community, belongingness to a, he is my family member, whether he is successful or not, that gives you a sense of identity and anchoring. That's one of the important values which we have. So whereas other societies may have something else. So in this regard, first of all, how do we define life? How do you understand your own life and priorities in life, your goals and the objectives, and how do you achieve them? In this regard, how stress as a factor is pulling you down. And trust me, once you read a book or you do something, it is not going to go away as once and for all. It is a recurring issue. One has to be aware of it and practice it to make stress reduction techniques as part of your life, as in your regular life. Then only some some solace can be found. My point is, how do we define life? What are our life priorities? So that is also very important as a philosophical level. What is meaningful life for you should be really defined by you, and pursue your life accordingly. Yeah, I want to hear from you, please. Any responses, please? Any questions? Anything? So I can go on, I can share a few things, but Dilip sir, if they have something to say, otherwise we may close also. If you have something to say, I will be happy, we can discuss. See, my point is, what are the values? What are the ethical principles based on which we are connecting our life? It's also very important. That it is related to stress. You know what I mean to say. Somebody again, we were discussing an example of Gandhi. Suppose for him, means are also as important as ends. That means I want to become rich. That is my end. That is my end goal. The means, the method which I adopt is also very important. That means it should be as pure as the end. Suppose I do some scam, I do some backdoor things, and then become rich. It is not ethical for some thinkers, many thinkers, including Gandhi. So, in that sense, that sort of a life might be very stressful, because my value system probably is not in congruence with the general social, ethos. So you please understand. So I mean to say the way we value our own, I mean the way we pursue our own life based on the philosophy, based on our understanding. I mean our own. I mean these projects are related to that. That's what I mean. This is my humble submission. Yeah. Any questions, please? Any suggestions? Any criticism? Yeah, I wish. I mean, you can find your own ways to relax, which are therapeutic for you, which can soothe you, which can manage your responses to these situations. I mean, which are considered stressful. That means that distress, as we were talking about, which are actually, I mean, which are I mean, not considered as so healthy also for physical body as well as mental health. So, I mean, and you find your own way of handling that and try to become stress-free, managing your time and sleep well, and of course, having a reasonably good diet, which can be also helpful in this regard. So, with this, I think I will stop. Unless you have something to say. So Dilip sir, yeah. How to develop right understanding in day-to-day life? Of course, I mean, of course, there is some wisdom through books, through people, through life experiences. But then, I mean, my response also would be something like this. Of course, we need to be mindful. We need to probably learn from, I mean, many sources about what is rightful and not so good. And also, in a way, we also learn things through trial and error also. Of course, I mean, the rightful understanding is also experiential. That's what I mean to say. It's not just bookish knowledge. It has to also, I mean, it may also, one source of it is also through our life experiences and how do we learn from it? How do we absorb it? And of course, from our teachers, from community, from books, from others' experiences, I mean, as such. So that, I mean, and our own life, and being a keen observer with a keen sense of learning, I think that's most important. It's not that we have to do a lot of errors to learn. I'm not saying that, but then whatever is the situation present to us, we may have to learn from that so that we arrive at a better understanding. I don't know whether I satisfied you query or not, but this is what I say. Any others? No, my point is, as end engineers, I'm sure we are all very bright, scholars. Stress definitely seems to have some role. Sometimes in our country also, in fact, more. Anything related to stress and mental health is seen with some sense of stigma. That means you can't approach. You may not seek professional help. Forget professional help. I mean, you may share with colleagues, friends. Somehow there is a hesitation. We need to recognize that this is a very common thing. It is not a disease or a problem. I mean, we don't hesitate to talk about our physical health if there is some aberration or some error. I mean, similarly, if anything is stressing us out, we need to seek help. Do not keep it to yourself, please. I mean, and of course, if you can handle it yourself, fantastic. But then, if it is beyond you, don't bottle it up. It is not. It may not. It is not a solution. You cannot deny this. By burying it, you are not. I mean, few things may fade away with time, but then if there is a chronic problem, it is going to reappear. Sometimes with more stronger manner. With more forceful way. So kindly face it, face it with strength, and of course we can handle it. I mean, uh, whatever is our life situation, whatever is the problem confronting you. My point is, as professionals, we are all expected to do well, and professional stress is understood. Given the number of projects you are supposed to do, number of research papers you need to publish, or students, MTech, PhDs or BTech projects you may be guiding or writing or whatever, etc., teaching, etc., etc. So in this regard, stress seems to be definitely an impediment for our, in our everyday functioning, and it seems to be really cluttering our mind. You feel light, you try to feel light, and try to find your own mojo, as they say, your own ways of distressing yourself. And of course, you know, of course, probably we can perform better. And I'm not saying performing better means competing with others, not comparing with others. You should be happy at the end of the day. You should be knowing whether you have given your best or not. So that's why I was saying your own philosophy of life should be really clear for us, so that we and always this comparing, contrasting with others also is one of the stressful things in professional life, as we know very well. Yeah, thank you. So anything more? Otherwise we close. Okay, thank you. So I close the meeting now, is it? Yeah. Okay, Dr. Dilip, thank you for the opportunity. I'm closing it up now. Is it okay, participants? Yeah. Okay.
Hello, sir. Hello. Hello, sir. Hello.
Sir left the meeting, sir. Hello.
అయిపోయిందా?
సార్ కంప్లీట్ ఇప్పుడే లెఫ్ట్ అయ్యారు సార్.
అదే 4 వర్క్ గారి క్లాసు సరేనండి సార్, నేను తర్వాత మాట్లాడతాను 1 మినిట్. ఓకే
ఓకే ఓకే ఓకే
డాక్యుమెంట్స్ గూగుల్ లింక్ మీకు షేర్ చేస్తాను సార్, షేర్ చేస్తాను. ఒక మినిట్.
ఓకే ఓకే సార్. ఓకే సార్.
వెయిట్ సార్, ఐ విల్ షేర్ ద అటెండెన్స్ లింక్ అండ్ టెస్ట్ లింక్, ప్లీజ్ వెయిట్.
ఓకే ఓకే సార్.
Thank you, Dilip sir.
All the participants